What's up everybody, Jared here with carbuzz.com, and today I am bringing you a review of the 2022 Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe. This is the plug-in hybrid version of the Jeep Grand Cherokee, the first one that Jeep has ever done. It is supposedly the most fuel efficient option, and it is the most powerful option. So let's go ahead and dig on in. If you want to see my full review of the standard Jeep Grand Cherokee with the V6 engine, I have that up on the channel. I will include a link down below, but today we're going to be focusing on the 4xe, which gets mostly the same trim details as the regular model. So we're taking a look at the Overland Trim, which is like third from the top, but it has a lot of options that are going to make this a very luxurious vehicle. But starting with the styling, it's mostly the same as what you're going to get on the standard Grand Cherokee. We have Jeep's 7-slot grille there. We do have these blue tow hooks here. Blue is the accent color for the 4xe, which I think actually looks really cool when paired with this white. The blue just really sticks out very nicely. We do also have a little bit of blue surrounding the Jeep badge here, which is quite cool. So you can see that around the Jeep badge, we have a nice blue accent. So now let's go around the side here. We've got 20-inch wheels as standard on this Overland Trim, but you can get 18-inch wheels with like a more off-roady tire as part of an off-road package if you so choose. We've got the E logo with our charge port. I'm going to come back to this just a little bit later, but that is where you can do all of your charging on the 4xe. We've got our Grand Cherokee emblem down here with our little American flag, which I did notice is not on the correct way. Obviously the flag is backwards. The stars are supposed to be on this side, but according to flag code, the stars are always supposed to be facing forward of the vehicle. So this Grand Cherokee that I'm driving might have some kind of defect from the factory in terms of that. Now here at the back, all of the 2-row Grand Cherokees are going to have this kind of black bar in between the headlights. Some of the reviewers say that they don't like it. I think it looks fine, to be honest. I think overall this is a very attractive vehicle. The Grand Cherokee has always been attractive to me, but I think this one is like super luxurious, almost to like Range Rover vibes. You can even get it with like a two-tone roof, you know, a solid color here and then a black roof like you can on a Range Rover. As I mentioned, we have the Overland Trim, one of the higher trim, but not the highest trim that you can get. And you do have a 4xe logo back here letting you know that you have the plug-in hybrid. And again, Jeep badge with a little bit of blue. Obviously, we have a power tailgate on a vehicle that costs this much, and you're gonna see that we have a ton of storage space in here. This is a very nice amount of space back here, plenty to house all of your stuff. Now you cannot get the Grand Cherokee 4xe as the L, so the Grand Cherokee L is a little bit longer and it gets you a 3rd row, which is quite nice. The other thing that the L gets you is that you can release the 2nd row from the trunk here. They actually did not put any way to drop the 2nd row from the trunk back here, which is a little bit annoying in my opinion. We have a little bit of Easter eggs too, I should show you. We've got our little Willis Jeep there in that piece of glass, and then we have the different Grand Cherokee silhouettes there on that side, which, I don't know, I like these little kitschy Jeep touches. So I mentioned I was going to talk about the charger a little bit later, and here's where I'm going to do it. So I have the charger right here. You get this 110 outlet charger with every Jeep 4xe. It normally lives, just so you know, it's not a big clump of cables in your trunk. They give you a little storage area for it. You do have your full-size spare under here, which is quite nice. And then this little corner pouch right here is where you would typically wrap up the cable and house it. That's actually like a really nice place, in my opinion, to put the charger. So I'm going to bring it out now so that we can talk about the charge speeds, because I'm sure you're curious. So the Grand Cherokee 4xe can charge at a rate of 7.2 kilowatts, which admittedly is not all that fast, but admittedly it's only a 17 kilowatt hour battery. So you don't really need like the 250 kilowatt speeds that you get in like a full EV. So Jeep says that on a 110 outlet, you should be able to charge in about 6 hours. And on a 240, which is like a public charger, or if you have a 240 installed in your house, you should be able to do it in anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. Now, I've noted that those times seem a little bit optimistic in my testing. there is a feature on the touchscreen where you can adjust how fast this vehicle will charge from levels 1 to 5, and the previous journalist had it turned down, so it was telling me like 6 hours on a level 2, like 16 hours on a level 1. I eventually put it to level 5, and now it's a little bit closer to those Jeep estimates, but I still believe that those are a little bit optimistic. So just letting you know that from my testing experience, and from my testing experience only. So now let's step into the Grand Cherokee. We've got the Overland Trim, nice Napa leather here that's part of an optional package. You can get slightly not as nice leather, but I think this leather is very nice. Not the nicest leather that you can get. You can get Palermo leather on this guy with some really nice quilted stitching. This is really nice, but again, not the nicest you can get. We do have Overland kind of embossed here on the seat, and as part of the package that got us this nicer Napa leather, we do have massaging here as well, and it is a really good massage. Now let's go ahead and step in. I'm gonna hit the start button. You can ignore that warning about the charging. It's obviously because I didn't plug that cable into anything. So now we're going to talk about the Grand Cherokee's interior, which is a really, really nice place to sit. This is probably the nicest, I'm not going to say probably, definitely the nicest Grand Cherokee that I have ever been in. We've got a 10.1 inch Uconnect 5 touchscreen. This is a really nice touchscreen. It's got wireless CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. You can actually link 2 phones to it at the same time, which is a great feature. I love the user interface. It's very easy to figure out, but as you just saw, sometimes the menus are a little bit sluggish to pull up, especially the map. And I have noticed that it is a little bit laggy on me. This has shut itself down more than once on me, which is a little bit annoying. So although I like the screen itself, this particular one has been a little bit laggy on me. So I did want to point that out to you in the matter of fairness. We also have a secondary screen here as our gauge cluster, which is quite nice, highly configurable. There is a lot that you can do on this gauge cluster. I'm going to try and get it to focus here. It is a little bit sunny the way that we are sitting, but you can do a lot on this. So you can have your fuel economy, you can have your range. There's like so many different screens that you can funnel through on this using this little D-pad right here. Let's see, you can have a full color map. I'm going to go ahead and show you that. It looks great. I don't think you can have Apple CarPlay though, as far as I know. You can have your pitch and roll, which is sort of your off-roady stuff right here. You can know what mode you're in. You can have your audio, obviously. You can even have a night vision camera. Now this is not going to do anything during the day, but it is really cool. It will point out pedestrians and animals and stuff that cross your path. So I do really like that. We've got some really nice ADAS systems as well. Really good lane keep assist, adaptive cruise control, and all of that kind of stuff. We do have a little light up here, by the way, that I've just noticed. That is letting us know our charge state. So you can quickly look at that and see whether or not you are charging. Down here, we have our dual zone automatic climate controls, heated steering wheel, ventilated seats, all of that good stuff. I mentioned the massage seats. I'm going to go ahead and turn those on. We've got 5 modes. I really like the rock climb and waterfall modes. They work really well. These are very good massage seats. We've got our surround camera, which is really nice. This is a really, really good camera system. We also have a forward-facing camera, which is great for off-roading. You can kind of see where all the rocks and boulders and stuff like that are. So if you are going to take this off-roading, it is cool for that. It even has this cool function. If I hit clean camera, it washes the camera, so if it gets all muddy, that is a really cool feature. I like that. I wish more vehicles had that. Down here, we have our USB and USB-C ports, as you can see. In there, HDMI cable as well. That's going to hook up to this passenger display, which is about $1,000 optional extra. You can't really see it from the driver's side. It is specifically tuned like that, so you can't see it from this angle as to not distract the driver. You also have a wireless charger in here, but if you don't need anything in there, you can just kind of close this little door. We have our rotating shift knob here for park, reverse, neutral, and drive. It's actually not letting me put it in right now because I have that charger plugged in, so it thinks I'm going to drive away with the cable. We have rock, snow, sand and mud, auto, and sport driving modes. I haven't had a chance to really play around with those too much. We do have our 4-wheel drive low for off-roading. We also have hill descent control, and this is a really cool switch too. So we have, this is the air suspension control. I'm gonna go ahead and lower it as low down as it can, so you can see how low this air suspension goes. So you can get like I think it's like 10 or 11 inches of ground clearance total, but this is going to deliver like 3 or 4 inches of travel height. So let's see. It's gonna honk at me for leaving the key. So that is the Grand Cherokee in its lowest suspension setting. So as you can see, it squats down like really low for entry and exit, which is quite cool. Now I'm gonna go ahead and bring it to its highest setting, and I promise you, you're gonna see a big difference here. So I think I'm gonna have to shut that. And now let's go ahead and raise it on up, all the way up. So you're gonna see in the little gauge cluster, you're gonna have the little icon telling you that the suspension is raising. We're gonna see the lights start to flash. I hear it as it's creaking a little bit to get up. I'm telling you, this thing can get way up there. It's very cool. And it'll let me know on this screen when my off-road ride height is achieved. Off-road to ride height achieved. All right, now we can go ahead and take a look. It's gonna beep at us again. But look how tall this thing gets. It's really cool. Look at that. That is really cool. I can see that being very useful off-road. See how much clearance we have there on the wheel well? A very, very cool feature there. So now I also have to talk to you about the different hybrid modes that we have here. So there are 3 different modes. You have hybrid, electric, and e-save. So hybrid, basically what that's going to do is use both the gasoline motor and the electric motor, whichever one is most efficient at the time. It's going to even tell you that on the screen when you push that button. When you go to electric, that's exactly what you think it is. It's going to save fuel for later use using only the electric power. And then you have e-save mode, which can do one of 2 things. It can either just save the electricity for later, or it can charge the battery actively. So I'll talk a little bit more about those as we get the Grand Cherokee out on the road. Now I want to talk about the rear seats, because we do have a really cool feature on this one. We have the rear seat entertainment package. So this is really cool here. I'm gonna go ahead and step on in so that we can shut off all the beeping, because it is super annoying. So rear entertainment screens, these cost $2,000, and I gotta say, I almost always tell people not to get these, because what are you gonna do? Bring DVDs with you for your kids, and then they're never gonna use it. But this one I actually would buy for $2,000, because these are connected to 2 Amazon Fire Sticks, 1 for each TV, so you get another Fire Stick for this side. Now these can work, they can show the same image, so your kids can watch the same thing together, or they can work independently, so your kids can watch their own things. You have headphones down here. You can charge your phone up as well, or you could bring an HDMI with you and plug in like an Xbox or PlayStation or something like that. And this is all hooked to Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, whatever you want, whatever you could do on a Fire Stick. So basically, let's just say your kids are watching their favorite show on Netflix. They have to pause it because you're ready to take them to school. They can actually get in the car and pick up exactly where they left off on their profile. This is incredible. I wish that automakers would have come up with this years ago, because this takes the rear seat entertainment and finally takes it to a point where I think it's actually worth the extra money. This is all being powered by a 4G LTE router that is built into the car, but you can also use your phone's data connection if you want, if you don't want to pay for the added data connection on this car. But this is fantastic. You can even watch live TV, and I'm not even 100% sure how they're doing the live TV, if it's internet streaming or what, but you can watch live TV. There's like all of these channels. So you have NFL channel, you have like a million versions of the same channel. So you have like the main ABC, and then you have like a bunch of local affiliates. This is awesome. I didn't even know that this was available on this screen, but it's just another reason why I really would spend $2,000 on this. Now, just speaking about the back seat in general, if you don't want to get the second row, entertainment screens here. We have plenty of room in here. This is a nicely sized mid-sized vehicle. I have my own climate controls back here with heated seats. I don't have ventilated seats back here because that's locked to, I believe, the Summit Reserve, but I do have plenty of USBs down here. 2 USBs, 2 USB-Cs, and a 115 volt outlet, which is quite nice. I also have sunshades that come as an optional package, and you may have noticed already we do have a panoramic roof here giving us a lot of space, so that is quite nice. We've got the 19 speaker Macintosh audio system, which I haven't mentioned before is really, really good. It is a really banging audio system. I highly recommend it. I loved it in the Jeep Grand Wagoneer as well. And I showed you the screen, but I can kind of show you from a better positioning now that I'm back here. You can control a bunch of things as the passenger back here. You can set navigation. You can kind of control where the audio is coming from back here. I don't love this screen. It's like a little laggy. It's definitely not the best resolution because of that whole thing where you can't see it from the one side. So it's really not all that bright even from the passenger seat. Now, Jeep says that you can mirror what is happening on the back screens on this screen, so the passenger could watch Netflix or whatever, but I have not been able to get that to work here on my test model. So that is something to consider if you are going to spend $1,000 on this screen. I kind of don't see the point of it because the passenger can always just reach over and use the main screen. But that is just my opinion on the subject. All right, now let's get the Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe out on the road. And we got to start by talking about that drivetrain because it is such a crucial component to this particular version of the Grand Cherokee. So this is the same drivetrain that you've been able to get in the Wrangler for a little while now. So you get a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. So that's smaller than the V6 and V8 engine options that you can get in the regular Grand Cherokee. By itself, it produces 270 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque, but you have 2 motor generators, electric motors that is. You have a belt-driven motor on the engine side that produces an additional 44 horsepower, and then you have a second motor in the transmission casing that delivers 134 horsepower. So altogether, same power figures that you're going to get in the Wrangler 4xe. 375 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque. Those are the best numbers that you are able to get in a Grand Cherokee right now because there are no SRT versions, at least not as of this filming. That's going to make this the quickest Grand Cherokee model in the lineup, even quicker than the 5.7-liter Hemi V8 model at around 6 seconds to 60. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to turn around and we're going to see how that power delivery works in practice, whether or not this really does feel quick, because the last Grand Cherokee I drove was the V6 model. It wasn't sluggish, but it definitely was not fast. I did not have a chance to sample the V8 model because they did not have any at the time when I went and drove it in Denver. So let's floor the 4xe and see how quick that 4-cylinder hybrid drivetrain feels. All right, much delay. Woo, there we go. Oh yeah, wow, okay. It is really quick. There was a huge delay from when I hit the throttle to when the gasoline engine decided to kick on, give me all of its power. It felt like the drivetrain wasn't really ready, but once everything was working together in concert, yes, this is really quick, much quicker, much more responsive, at least after everything is woken up, than the V6 model that I drove. So that's good, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about some of the issues that I've had with like the responsiveness and some other issues with this drivetrain. But first, we're going to talk about the hybrid component. So this is a plug-in hybrid. I've already talked about the 17 kilowatt hour battery that we have in here. So you can drive 26 miles on electric only range. So we've got the 3 modes. I've been driving it in hybrid mode. So you put your foot down like that and it is going to deliver you the gasoline engine. But I have plenty of juice right now, so what I'm gonna do is go ahead and put it into electric mode. So now we don't have the engine on at all. I'm gonna go ahead and hit the gas, or hit the throttle, sorry. No gasoline being used right there. Definitely not as quick of acceleration when you don't have that 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder contributing to the equation. Let me see what happens when I just put my foot down all the way in electric mode. Nope, it's going to kick on the engine. So even in electric mode, it's not a fully defeatable engine. You cannot fully defeat it. That is not the purpose of this car. Jeep realizes the acceleration you're asking for when you put your foot fully down is not going to be satisfied enough by the electric power. So even in electric mode, which I'm doing now, you have to be a little more careful with the throttle there. Now, that being said, I like driving this vehicle in electric mode because it is very smooth. You know, there's no engine noise. It's very quiet in here, obviously, because of that. I can go ahead and put my foot down, and it is very immediate, albeit timid, power delivery. But here's the problem with it, and it's a problem I have with a few other plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, but it seems to be more noticeable in this. I can still feel, because this has an 8-speed transmission, I can feel it shifting as I use that electric power. So I'm going to come to a full stop because there's nobody behind me. I'm going to just accelerate off the line, wait for it. All right, I just felt the 1-2 shift, and I just felt the 2-3 shift. You can really feel that even in electric mode. It's not as smooth as when you're driving a regular EV that only has one gear, so to speak. It is not a smooth operation to me, and that's a little bit weird in my mind. I noticed this in the Wrangler as well, but the Wrangler is such a mess handling and, noise-wise that it's just not as noticeable. But because the Grand Cherokee is so refined, and this is a greatly refined vehicle, it's very quiet in here, the air suspension that we have is very comfortable, the steering has a great weight. This is a really nice car to drive, but because it's so nice to drive, it reveals issues that I have with this plug-in hybrid drivetrain. And one of the issues is that hybrid mode doesn't really operate the way I would want it to. They say it uses the best combination of electric power and, and gasoline power, but all that basically means is I'm driving, I'm, light on the throttle, it's using my battery. So basically the 26 miles that I have in hybrid mode, those will get exhausted eventually, and then boom, you're left with only the gasoline engine. And when you're only left with the gasoline engine, it reserves a little bit of power for things like stop, start, and whatever, and like maybe coasting you off the line. But for all intents and purposes, you're driving it as a gasoline vehicle at that point. And I don't like that. I wish that it would maintain a little bit more battery so that it could basically operate the way that the Kia Sorento hybrid that I was driving last week operates. You can coast, in slow traffic on electric power. When you take your foot off, it operates too much as a gasoline powered vehicle when that battery is gone. And 26 miles ain't long, folks, so you are really not going to have that fully electric benefit for very long. And when you run out of the electric motor, your fuel economy is going to plummet. So plug-in hybrids are a little bit weird with the way that the EPA rates them. But when you're running with the electric motor and the gasoline motor, Jeep says you're going to be getting about 56 mpge, which is pretty low. I think that's actually on electric power only, which is pretty low for running on electric power. Other PHEVs can do a lot better than that. But when you run out of that battery, you're going to be getting 23 miles per gallon, which is exactly 1 mile per gallon better than the Pentastar V6 version of this car. And I haven't really talked fully about the price yet, but this is a huge price delta to be getting 1 mile per gallon. So unless you live like 12 miles from your work and you can go there on electric power, charge up, come home, charge up again, I really just don't think that the limited electric range of this model makes all that much sense. You are getting more power, which is nice, but it seems like a heck of a lot of complexity to add that much power when you could have just put, I don't know, like the new inline 6 turbo motor that they just put in the Grand Wagoneer in this, which I feel like that's coming. That'll probably replace the V8 engine. But this seems like a whole lot of extra complexity just to get a little bit of extra power. And, for the charging too, I have not noticed that this Jeep is charging as quickly as Jeep says. So I'm really just not all that impressed with it. We've got the e-save mode. I gotta mention that too, because I said I would mention it. That is basically gonna do one of two things. It's either going to rely on the engine and just save the electric power for when you need it later, or it can actually use the engine to charge the battery while you're on the move, thus killing your fuel economy, but it should actually like charge up the battery actively as you're driving along. You know, it's cool that they put those two modes in there, and that mode is calibrated perfectly fine for me, as is the electric mode, although I wish there was maybe some option to literally not have the engine kick on at all. The hybrid mode is the mode that I have the problem with. I just wish that it would use the gasoline engine a little bit more readily and not just drain your EV battery unless you're like, you know, purposefully, you know, accelerating. That's the mode that I don't think is tuned that well. So I want to sum this up by saying this. I love the way the Jeep Grand Cherokee drives. I loved it the first time I drove it with a V6 engine, but I don't think the 4xe powertrain is what I would buy for this particular SUV. All right, so that was the 2022 Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe. By all accounts, this new Grand Cherokee is the best one that Jeep has ever built. I think that it really feels like a true luxury vehicle from America. Now, here's the problem with that. Especially if you're going to opt for the plug-in hybrid 4xe, you're paying luxury prices for this Jeep. The base Grand Cherokee 4xe will cost you $57,700. Now, that is around $15,000 more than the base Laredo V6. Now, granted, you're getting a lot more power than the base Pentastar V6. You're also getting more equipment, including four-wheel drive as standard. But that is a ton of money to be spending on what Jeep is basically positioning as a power upgrade. Because to put it in perspective, if you want to upgrade from the V6 to the 5.7 liter V8 Hemi, that's about $3,800. So a lot less than upgrading to this 4xe model, and it only gets more expensive from there. If you want the Grand Cherokee Trailhawk, the off-roady version, that's going to cost you a little over $62,000. That's the most off-road version of the Grand Cherokee, and for the 2023 model year, which might be what you're looking at by the time you watch this video, that is the only way that you can get a Trailhawk for 2023. You can no longer get it with the V6 or the V8 engine, which is quite interesting. Now let's talk about the Overland that we have. This is the model that we reviewed here. It starts off decently reasonably at a little under $66,000, which I actually think is a pretty good price for it. It's only a little bit more than the Trailhawk, but here's the problem. They put a lot of options on this model. The one that we've tested is over $75,000, so about $10,000 worth of options. That is basically what you'd pay for the highest trim version of the Grand Cherokee 4xe, because the Summit version, which is above this Overland, costs $69,820, and the Summit Reserve, which is the most expensive version of the Grand Cherokee that you can get, is $74,300 in 4xe trim. So basically, you can get this Overland trim that we have and option it basically to the same point as a fully loaded Summit Reserve. Now, there are some things on this Overland that we get that come standard on the Summit Reserve, but if you're gonna opt for all of those anyway, I think you might as well just get the Summit Reserve. It gets the nicer leather, it gets better wheels, etc., etc. So it is a little bit weird that Jeep lets you spend that much on something that is not even the top trim. Now, I should mention that all of these prices, at least as of right now, will include a $7,500 federal tax credit. So if you can kind of factor that in your head, the 4xe drivetrain makes a lot more sense. And the other trim levels, those higher ones that I mentioned, aren't as much of a price premium as the base 4xe. So those ones range anywhere from about $8,000 to almost $10,000 more than their V6 gas engine equivalents. And if you factor in the tax credit it's really only about $1,000 to $2,000. But the problem is that tax credit doesn't come off the price of the vehicle. You still have to buy this vehicle for $75,000. So if you can't afford that, the tax credit really isn't going to do you much good. Where it might come in handy, and where we've seen this with the Wrangler 4xe, is that if you go to lease this vehicle, you can factor in that $7,500 into the lease price. So this 4xe Grand Cherokee might have the same benefit. You might be able to lease it for very little, or at least comparable to the V6 or V8 models. So be sure to check with your local Jeep dealerships on that, because I really just can't tell you what your lease price is going to be from my perspective. You're gonna have to do a little research on that yourself. But it could turn out that this more powerful Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe is going to be the same price to lease as a V6 or a V8. And if that's the case, then I think it makes a lot more sense, because you are getting a lot more power, you're getting some usable electric range, and then I think that the Grand Cherokee makes a little bit more sense. But my big problem is I don't think that this plug-in hybrid drivetrain is that smooth. And when you're talking about spending $75,000 or even $80,000 for the most fully loaded Grand Cherokee, you have a lot of competitors in that space. You can get the Volvo XC90 T8, which can have up to 450 horsepower and a longer electric range than this. You can get a BMW X5 plug-in hybrid. You can get a Range Rover Sport plug-in hybrid. Those are some big names, and I'm just not 100% sure that if I was spending that amount of money, that Jeep badge on the front is worth it. Let me know if you agree in the comments, and if you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to be alerted of our latest videos. I'll see you next time.